Alright, this week I'm going to show you how to make Belgian waffles. This will require a mixer and a pot for the stove. We're going to start this on the stove. It's a little bit more involved than making batter for normal kind of American style waffles. So here on the stove I have 16 ounces of milk, 3 ounces of butter, and a 1/4 ounce of salt. So the goal here is you want to get it just up to a boil and get the butter melted into it. So as this is going, you don't want it up too high. You don't want to scorch the milk on the bottom while you're waiting for everything to come to temperature. But you do want to measure out your flour. So to this, when we get it to a boil, we're going to add 8 ounces of flour. Have that measured and ready to go in once it's up to temperature. So with this, what we're going to do is once we get all this melted and get it just to a boil, we're going to add the flour in and then mix it on heat until it forms a ball and pulls away from the pot. At that point, we're going to pull it off of the heat and transfer the dough at that point essentially to a mixing bowl. You can see now it's just coming to a boil. So I'm going to add in the flour. And mix that in. It may help at this point to lift it up off the heat a little bit just so that your milk doesn't overflow. Our goal here is we are trying to mix this flour in, so we start getting it to pull away. You can see here, it's all pulled away from the bowl. The bowl's actually pretty clean underneath. So we're going to turn the heat off, pull it off, and put it in a mixing bowl. So with the paddle attachment on, I'm going to transfer this into this bowl. You do, after you get it in here, want to let it cool down, let it rest for about 5 minutes, just so that as we add in the eggs, it's not hot enough that we're going to end up cooking them. But while that is resting, we can measure out the rest of our ingredients. I'm just going to use the same bowl I was using for the flour. So for this we need 13 ounces of eggs, which is about 8 large eggs. Thankfully this recipe does not call for different parts of the egg, just the yolks or just the whites, so it is pretty simple in that regard. So I had a mixture of large eggs and extra large eggs, and so that at 7 gets me to right around 13 ounces. So I'm going to stop there. Now for this part, we're going to need to add these eggs gradually into here as it's mixing. To facilitate that, I recommend at the very least using a fork to break the egg yolks. Otherwise you're going to get big chunks just flopping in as you go. Without working the eggs too much, we can kind of get it to a point where this will flow in a little bit more seamlessly, a little bit more smoothly. It'll make our lives a little bit easier. Alright, so lock the bowl, unless you have one of the ones that you lift the bowl up to. We're going to put this on low. I'm gonna actually start it on the stir setting, and I'll probably move it up a little bit. So you can see we're getting a lot of steam out. It's part of why we move it to second speed. So as you're going slowly and adding these in, you want it to fully incorporate before you add in the rest, any more of the eggs. You can see it's a nice smooth-ish consistency. And at this point, we're going to add in cream and some more milk. So we need 8 ounces of cream. I'm going to use the same bowl. It's helpful at that point because if there's a little bit of egg that's left in there, it'll get pulled in when I do the cream. So you got the cream first, so it's 8 ounces of cream. Same process as before, put it on the second speed, and we want to slowly incorporate this in, so we're just going to pour it in very slowly, let it work into the dough. At this point, it is worth it to use a spatula to make sure you get all of the cream and everything left in the bowl in here. As well as I'm going to kind of scrape the sides a little bit, get some of this that's been building up past the mixer so it'll incorporate in. Okay, and the last bit is going to be 4 more ounces of milk. Alright, that's good. So you're doing this in a specific order. The reason why you do it in this order is because when you add the flour to the initial milk, it makes a very thick dough. So you're adding things in order based off of their viscosity, essentially. So the eggs first helps stretch out kind of that thicker dough, and then the heavy milk is denser than the normal milk, and then the bit of milk at the end. It just kind of, it's easier to incorporate them that way. If you tried to put like the normal milk in first, you'd end up probably splashing around a bunch. But this way, you can control that process a bit better. It should be about the consistency, like it's slightly thicker than what you'd expect a normal waffle batter to be. So this looks pretty good. If it does look too thick still, you can add a little bit more milk, and that will help thin it out. But this is looking pretty good. So we're going to pull this off and heat up a waffle iron. I have this heating up on maximum temperature. I'm going to try to do the first one on a kind of max temp, just because these are very delicate, so getting a nice good crisp outside is very important. Okay, so that is ready. This is a little bit more difficult to work with. You can get a big kind of heaping spoon here. This is about 2 ounces. So not fully, once I get a little bit more, fill this out. So I get it to about there. But I still got a ring around the outside. It works pretty well. Just press that back down and let it go. And we'll check it when the light turns back on. Okay, let's turn back on. I'm going to check it. Let me give it a little bit more time. Let's see how it's... Oh, it's pretty good. Use a fork to gently lift it off of the waffle maker. See if we can pull it onto this plate. Okay, and there you have it. These are a lot more delicate, so they're a little bit more difficult to get out. You can use 2 forks to try to lift it out, or just let it go. But it gives a nice crisp outside, and the center is still very, very light, similar to like a puff pastry or a cream puff. And there you have it.